You want to talk for a moment about DE4 Season 2? I feel like there's a decent amount to chat about in relation to Season 2. I hadn't seen as many changes coming as they announced. I thought there'd be way less for Season 2. It seems like there's actually a pretty good amount.
Yeah, so I don't I talk to Blizzard sometimes about some changes. So sometimes I have a small amount of insider knowledge before things happen, but I did not anticipate this level of changes. I'm not of the opinion that before they were just sitting around doing nothing. Obviously they were working before and they're working now. So the question that I asked myself is, why were you able to make three or four times the changes in the last month as you were able to at any other part of the development cycle that I've been a part of since the alpha? Did you bring all hands on deck? Did you move forward things that you were going to release later in the pipeline and just shoved them all forward to release them now to kind of stop the bleeding? What did you outsource something? Like what exactly happened? That's the thing that doesn't really make sense to me, but I'm happy for it and the game is getting better. But as a lot of people correctly identify, a lot of people are very angry because they're like, this should have been on launch. This is just them completing the game and calling it an update. I get it, but at the same, here's the bottom line for me at the end of the day. I just want the game to be good. Just make it good, whatever. Okay, it wasn't a complete game on the launch. Just make it good so we can play it is kind of where I land on that.
Yeah, pretty much right on too. It's a good question though. My guess would be it's probably a mix where they had to. I would assume they had to double down and like start cranking stuff out. There's a message in chat saying because their player metrics is tank. I think that's probably accurate. If I had to guess, again, complete guess. I have no idea, but I would think they saw bad press. They saw the numbers not being what they wanted it to be, and they're like, all right, take everything we already have, cram into season two, double down, get as much changes as they can, because there are some changes in there that could only have been done after the feedback had been received. And so for that reason, it seems like, well, they would have had to have done it. They would have had to have done it after people called out certain changes. A lot of those being the quality of life ones related to like stuff like mounts, teleporting inside dungeons, etc. So there's some things where it's like people complained and then they started fixing those. But stuff like new Paragon glyphs, we're getting new Paragon glyphs, itemization going to 925, every unique being changed, damage buckets, I guess, are being changed. What they said they're going to announce on the 10th. The 5 bosses, new Helltide event, vampire powers, I guess, would have been equivalent to just the cage tarts of before, but we got more coming this season than we got for season one. So I'm guessing season one was almost like what the core of the game should have been at a minimum, and then they just kind of crammed it into the beginning season or something and used it for season one, because season one seemed like there wasn't. I don't know how you feel about season one, but it seemed like there was barely any content. It was like a small story and then cage tarts, and that's literally it.
Yeah, season one didn't have a lot of content. For most of Diablo's history, not Diablo 4, most of Diablo's history, most of the seasons were just a reset. They just reset the leaderboards, which Diablo 4 doesn't have, and then they go. Then they started to add powers here and there. Very rarely do they add any lore. Them adding like a quest that you do is kind of a new thing, and I know it is important to some people, so I'm not going to downplay its importance to them, but it doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't change my gameplay at all. I'd rather them, if it were up to me, I'd take out the development there and I would just make even cooler powers and find out more ways to make the game fun. But there is one topic that I want to make like have the community think about or talk about. And I think Blizzard is kind of admitting defeat on something with some of these changes. So I know for sure that in the Diablo 4 development cycle, they have changed developers and leadership. They lost key employees. The actual direction of the game, you're like, you're like sailing on a ship in the ocean. It's actually changed course multiple times. And I know internally they don't always agree on exactly what Diablo 4 should be. But I think them making these changes is kind of admitting that the thing that they launched with is not exactly working. They went with like this completely open world based thing where everything was kind of difficult to do and you had to kind of earn everything. But it's not an earn everything way like classic WoW, where you kill a boar and then you eat a piece of bread for 12 seconds, then you kill one more boar. And if you pull two boars, you die instantly. Like that's challenging for some reason in a fun way. Everything that was challenging here, maybe it's because it's an ARPG, just didn't feel good. And now it seems like there's actually like a paradigm shift. It seems like they actually internally have landed upon this is not working. We're going to make the overworld powerful, but you're going to run as fast as you can on your horse. You can insta teleport into the dungeons, and we need to start pumping our quality of life, kind of like how Last Epoch is doing, which has been very well received. I think we're actually seeing like an internal mentality shift in how the future of the game is going to go completely.
It kind of reminds me of the video you made a while ago about like stop slowing us down, where you kind of went through a bunch of those things you were talking about, where it's like there's a bunch of stuff in the game that doesn't feel good, that constantly slows you down. It seemed like some of those were direct responses to that feedback.
I mean, I'm not narcissistic or vain enough to think that everything is because of me. It isn't. There's a whole community. There's a million different sources of this information, but I did kind of laugh, and I made a comment during the live stream when we were like 80% through it with all the changes that they made. I just said, this has been my YouTube for the last 3 months. All I did
Yeah,
was
that's
make
what I'm saying. Like, I know you're being like, oh, well, it could be other people. It's like, bro, a lot of these are like changes that you've been like pissed about. No, it seemed like a direct correlation.
a lot of the content creators these days that play these games all the time, it usually isn't just their opinion. They're sitting there with their community.
Yeah,
They raid other people. They talk to their communities. They talk to the other content creators. They read Reddit. They read YouTube.
yeah,
They
it's
read
true.
the official forums. They talk to Blizzard. Usually when I'm voicing something, it's not some selfish idea that I want for me that's enhancing my experiences. I talk to thousands of people, and 99% of them are telling me the same thing. I am not guessing here. Like, I'm telling you, this is how people are feeling.
Yeah.
To Blizzard's credit lately, and especially on the D3 team, they've gotten a lot better over the years at least hearing us out. We don't have all the answers, and content creators aren't game developers. I don't have this like kind of warped sense of reality, but I mean, at the end of the day, when people are telling you your game isn't fun and here's why, that's feedback you've got to listen to, man.
Yeah, and there's a couple points in chat saying like player streamers are saying the same thing. It's true. I think the reality is the game also has so many obvious glaring points that pretty much anyone who plays the game for a substantial amount of time will probably end up with the same feedback after a while, unless I don't know why you wouldn't see the same issues. Like for me, the one I still don't kind of get is traps. I'm glad they were changing traps where they're not going to delay you as long. Because I know maybe it's a bad. It could be a bad take. I've had bad takes before. It could be another bad take. But I don't understand the need for like environmental traps unless it's part of the theme of what's going on. Like just suddenly having a cave in happen is just weird. Like it's not like the labyrinth in PoE where it's like the lab is the difficulty. It's like you'll be walking suddenly. Oh, just here's a rock. It's like why?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and there's one thing that I always say in every game that I play, and I will say this till the day I die. Like I'm very close-minded about this. I don't think anyone could ever change my mind. Whoever was the first person in any video game to put an on death explosion into the game, I hope bad things happen to them because a lot of other people copied that, and I have no idea where the difficulty is,
Oh.
where the problem is that you're solving when you kill a monster and then surprise, you thought you won but you lost. To talk to your point specifically about the environmental traps, I like the traps, but I don't like the thing that you said. I agree with. If the trap isn't the actual difficulty, then as they changed in their patch notes, don't make it the difficulty. But I think the traps are cool for like the actual immersion, feeling like you're in a dungeon. The cave, like the
Yeah.
ceiling can collapse. You can knock this thing over and it does a thing, but make it a cool, fun thing and not some detrimental thing that just kills me. One more thing, by the way, I don't know if you watched the full live stream, but when they posted that on their PowerPoint, they immediately corrected it and they said, the PowerPoint says that we reduced the crowd control from traps, but what it's supposed to say is we reduce the crowd control from everything. So they said all crowd
Oh,
controls will go dramatically down. They said it was incorrect in the PowerPoint.
that is significantly better. That's a way different line then. Like just crowd control in Jimro as opposed to like the random fucking trap. I mean, that's a huge difference. I'm glad the code enchant got nerfed too, man. That one, I've died to that one. The code enchant hawks are the most tilting thing in the game for me. They ran used to, or at least they used to be. They run you down and peck you, and there's nothing you could do about it. That would drive me absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I was very, very. I'll tell you one of the most frightening things that I heard on one of the previous dev talks. I raced to YouTube and I made a video about this, and I screamed this from the high heavens. They made a comment and they said there was a question asked from the community, what are you going to do about crowd control in Diablo 4? And I believe it was Joe Shelley responded and he said, we're looking at ways to give players more options to deal with crowd control. I never raced to YouTube so fast in my life. And I said, those words is exactly what I don't want to see in Diablo 4. I don't want you to give me more ways to get unstoppable. The whole unstoppable chase is stupid. This is why everyone's playing Tornado Druid, because you have unstoppable 95% of the time. What I want you to do is I want you to nerf the ridiculous chain CC 6-second crowd controls. I don't want you to give me more skills that I have to take on my bar to deal with 6-second crowd controls. And then thank God they just nerf crowd controls. Like, thank you.
Yeah, essentially, it's
Don't.
like I don't need more pills to cure cancer. I just want you to cure cancer. You know what I mean? I don't need ways to deal with it. Just get rid of the disease, not the symptom. Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad crowd
So,
control is actually getting reduced. That's a W at least.
and I think chat coming up on the 10th could be another big win, man. I mean, they said that a lot of things are changing, but there's also these cascading effects. There's these chain reactions. So they said they're changing crit and vulnerable. That's code word for they're nerfing the shit out of crit and vulnerable.
Yeah.
But there's no way that their intention is to nerf the game. So they're going to change paragon glyphs and change uniques, but I'm expecting them to do something to make to bring the balance up because those are the two strongest stats by far. So I'm going to be paying very, very close attention to exactly what are the changes that you haven't mentioned that are going to offset these nerfs because
Do you
they're
think
going to be
they?
nerfs. That's 100%.
Do you think they'll just go season of the month style and okay, well now Overpower's busted, and then oh now we got to nerf Overpower, and now damage over time is busted or what have you? You think they're going to go that route, or what? If you had to guess?
Absolutely not. I don't think I have unreasonable expectations. They will never, they cannot do this. And I do not expect them to balance everything perfectly. It's impossible. There's no way to do it. No ARPG company ever has or ever will do it perfectly. I don't need perfect balance, but I need some basic core things to line up. I need crit and vulnerable nerfed to make all of the stats useful, at least in certain situations. I need overpower to work in the end game. Overpower is strong and is decent in the early game. It's worthless in the end game. All of these overpower builds that you design to be possible from like druids and maybe barbs, they're not possible because they don't do any damage. So you need to look at a full end game overpowered barb and how does it compete with a full bleed barb, do some testing and make it roughly equal. This whole thing of this one thing is super overpowered because we got the damage calculation wrong. This one, because this formula doesn't work. This is just, it's not going to work anymore. You got to get at least close. You got to get something that works in the long term that we can work with. Otherwise, the community is never going to let them live it down. I don't think that's good enough at all.
You think they got enough players over there that play at a high enough level and grind the game all the time to be able to understand the nuances of the balance?
Oh man. Well, Your knee-jerk reaction is to say no. That's the knee-jerk reaction. How could it have launched in this way? And, how could they have missed this? The knee-jerk reaction is to say no, of course not. They don't know anything. The true answer is I don't know. I don't know what their testing practices are. I know for sure. I know for a fact that there are some people on their team that are world-class video game players, multi-rank one, multiple game players, but I don't think that their job is testing. My inclination would be no, but the real answer is I don't know. It doesn't feel like it anyway. What do you think it is?
I would lean towards you probably have people that are good at developing stuff in terms of like creating, coding and building maps and doing all of that. But if I had to guess, they have to wait for the response by the people that understand the game well enough in order to be able to then change the things, meaning that when they put something out, they don't know whether or not it's good. If I had to guess, I mean, because that's what I'm doing. I'm guessing again. I have no fucking idea. I mean, with the reason I say that is because I get enough comments of people that don't understand the game well enough to, and they basically just kind of self-report when they leave comments. So I think it's probably the same thing with people developing the game. If I had to guess, it's probably not enough people there actually are super, informed on every class and every build and what makes a problem and how to balance it. And to be honest with you, if someone's like, okay, I'll turn the screws to you, DM, how do you balance the game? How do you fix the critical damage and vulnerability problem? I don't know if I would have a good enough answer to actually make the game in a much better playable state that everyone would agree is the correct way to balance the game. I'm not sure I know how to do that, to be fair with you, with the tools available. So I'm going to say probably not, but I don't know.
I think you make a super, super critical, good point that I have brought up in the past, not often enough. It is not easy to be a developer. It is not easy to solve these problems. If you pose the question that you ask, how do you solve crit and vulnerability? And you had 100 people that are complaining, draw their solution. If you could have a crystal ball and see the future and you implemented 99 out of 100 of their solutions, I think a lot of them would just make the game worse and the other half of them wouldn't solve the problem. Maybe you'd get one or two really good game developers that could drill the answer and have great ideas. But that is not easy to do. I do not envy being a developer. I do not think that I am a game developer. I do not know if I would be a good developer. I'd probably be a better tester. The developers themselves, I'm not expecting them to be as good at testing as they are at developing. But what I am expecting is Blizzard to implement a testing system between the testers and the developers that catches these things, that catches the obvious things, um, that just don't work. I just don't know their internal practices, but something seems a little off, at least up until this point. But we'll know a lot in season 2 to see whatever their fix is, how it actually works. We'll be able to tell if it works or not right away.
A couple people have mentioned a public test round. Do you think a public test round would do anything in terms of helping develop the game going forward? Like if they've done this in the past.
There's absolutely no debate whatsoever that it absolutely helps the development. There's no other way to say it. So you always gain a better state of the game, a more balanced state of the game if you host a PTR. But the thing that you lose is you lose the surprise. If you do a public PTR, everyone has seen the vampiric powers. People have killed Lord Zir. People develop the optimal ways rather than people logging in on day one and finding them. I have no clue what to do on day one. I know the fastest leveling strategy pre-patch. I'm reading the patch notes and I'm genuinely thinking maybe you should just do the overworld and hunt vampiric powers. So is my leveling guide going to be garbage? I genuinely don't know because I haven't played it. I just don't know. So you always gain more bug fixes, a more stable game, a more balanced game. If you host a PTR, you lose the allure, which is why people suggest to do a closed PTR. Let 15 people of your choosing, it doesn't have to be me, it doesn't matter, anybody, let them test it and let them give you feedback. But then the issue there is they have an unfair advantage on the leaderboards. If I get to practice leveling up with the vampiric powers and planning my exact route for 3 days when no one else has it, you can use that to a big advantage. And then now your leaderboards are compromised. If you're asking me what would I do, in some form, I would host a PTR. It's too valuable, catch too many bugs. I think you have to do it. Maybe you preload some endgame characters and let people fight Uber Lilith and try to respec it so you can one-shot her and then fix that. I think you should do it. I think the benefit is better than the penalty.
I've always wondered. Well, I mean, I guess I know the answer. It's money, but I've wondered why the companies never like actually hired internal play testers. I know there's quality assurance and there's probably some play testers in some games, but get like 10, 15 well-known people and hire them to be testers of these games. I don't know if that's something that's realistic to carry on in live service games for multiple years, but it seems like there's quite a bit of employees. You would think one or two of them being testers would be acceptable.
I completely agree. It's not like they have to sit there and test all day long. You don't, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a 100% dedicated tester. But I think it's advantageous to hire a couple of very skilled players of the game, people that are very aware of the metas, people that are very aware of the damage mechanics. Whenever you're planning something and the moment that you have an internal build, they need to go in and try to break it. Even one key employee that's trying to break bleed for Barb and bulwark for Druid, to catch these things before they go live. You just gain so much. You would gain so much rapport in the community if these things wouldn't launch. That I think it has to pay for itself at some point.
Yeah, you would think it would reduce. Well, maybe it wouldn't reduce dev time because they still have to fix the problems. But I am wondering about if season 3 leaderboards, because here's a conversation I'm trying to figure out, is that you realize in season 3 we finally get leaderboards, but I couldn't tell you, Rax. I have no idea what the leaderboards will be around. What exactly would you even get? There's no endless rifts. There's no. And what do you think? It's nightmare dungeon speed, how fast you clear. I mean, there's not really anything in which a leaderboard matters in this game, right? I can't figure out what you're competitively weighing a player against each other. Uber Lilith, like you said, is like a beta test for broken builds, and leveling seems to probably be heavily weighted by class. I don't know. What do you think they're going to weigh in terms of leaderboards? I don't know what exactly what's even competitive to compare against people.
Well, you start with the Diablo 2 and the PoE thing. The main leaderboard is the race to 100. And the way that you organize that is overall. So that'd be any class. And then you have a separate leaderboard for every class. I was the first Necro to 100, da 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 da. That's what PoE does on the hardcore thing. Is this person is the first person to reach 97. This person died at 94 in position 6. That stuff is kind of exciting in the beginning. So that's the most basic thing, which is very surprising they didn't have this on launch. That seems very easy to implement. Yeah, it's not exactly clear what the competitive mode of the Diablo 4 is currently. You could have most cinders collected in a single hell tide. This guy collected 2,124. The problem is that's going to be stupid because it's going to be like a 4-player thing where 3 people run ahead and just complete events and kill monsters, and you just on your horse the entire time sprinting for an hour collecting cinders. You could have fastest nightmare dungeon clear time on every single of one of the dungeons. If there's 20 dungeons, like the best time, this guy cleared it in 1 minute and 11 seconds and he's in first place. But I think Blizzard may also have to reimagine what the end game is around the leaderboards. Like maybe they're going to have a different mode that is a little bit more competitive where they build a leaderboard in. Maybe they can have first to kill Uber Lilith, as you said, if they allow these bugged builds to still exist. It's going to be the first person to be a level 72 bulwark druid that just wins by default, which is going to be real dumb, but I guess it'll also help to balance the game. Maybe that'll be the moment where it finally gets nerfed.
So surely, to your point about the public test round being a benefit to the game, it would be better to have like more quality assurance and testing ready and implemented in a good workflow before leaderboards come to the game. You would think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a quality assurance as early as I can get it. I'll get it at the beginning of making the game if I could. But here's another unrealistic expectation. right now it's the Bulwark Druid. Next season, it'll be something else. It'll be the Disintegrate Wizard. There's always something that slips through the cracks. I don't expect Blizzard to be perfect. It's all right. Problem is the Bulwark Druid has been running rampant for how long has the game been out? It's been out since June. We're halfway through October right now.
Yep.
Why is the Bulwark Druid still running rampant?
Right.
That's the thing that doesn't make sense.
That one has that got away with the absolute most in terms of any build of being disgusting. Because I mean it is disgusting, let's be honest, and it's been running basically the entirety of the game, because once people figured it out, I mean, the cat was out of the bag and there it goes. But it's been busted for basically since the game's launch entirely. I'm surprised it survived this long.
I have no explanation for it. Yeah, it's been here forever. I mean, I don't think Blizzard intends design-wise to cast a defensive skill to keep you alive and have it kill everything and also essentially make you unkillable. Doesn't make any sense.
True.
Don't know. Yeah, I guess I know Blizzard's aware of it. They just must have had other priorities. They just had other priorities. I'm really hoping that it dies for season 2 in 10 days. We got Elon Musk broadcasting to whatever millions of people that he's playing Bulwark Druid. That's the worst case scenario, man. That's the bug build.
Literally
exactly
more views. His live stream had more viewers than the peak of D4, like the entire category on Twitch. And 942K, right? But he had 1 million. So I mean, so imagine if every single person on the entire planet was live streaming Bulwark Druid at the peak of D4 launch. That's what just happened.
Yeah, and I saw a lot of people, they made a druid, they were fighting Uber Lilith, they couldn't do it, so then they swapped a Bulwark Druid and killed him. I'm just like, wow, sick. This game is pretty sick, bro. So I hope I don't know. I'm very salty toward the Bulwark Druid. Not that it existed, but the fact that it's still alive. Don't get it. Don't like it.